Hey guys, my name is Attorney Walter Knott. We're going to be going into specifically the whole $2,000 and the $1,000 recurring payment UBI that's being proffered by the Democrats, specifically Michigan, into the House of Representatives. But we're going into it from specifically an article. We're going to be going into it from the Forbes.com site article, Automatic Boost to Communications Act, the ABC Act, introduced in Congress that includes digital dollar by 2021. All right, so let's go into this a little bit. Which is ironic that they put the digital dollar thing in there, because what this act is mostly being seen by people about is the $2,000 up front and then basically $1,000 to every person in America per month until basically the end of this whole COVID crisis. It's actually a year after the whole COVID crisis officially ends. So let's go into this real quick. This is written by Jason Brett, contributor. I haven't read it yet, but usually Forbes does a pretty good job. A new bill introduced called the Automatic Boost to Communities Act is sponsored by Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, Democrat of Michigan, who sits on the Financial Services Committee, and Congresswoman Pramila, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, Jayapal, Democrat, Washington. Co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, Congresswoman Tlaib originally introduced a policy proposal on March 21st that drew a great deal of public attention with the idea of having the U.S. Treasury mint two $1 trillion platinum coins. So mint two $1 trillion platinum coins to fund stimulus payments. So basically, I held an interview last night with Congressman Tlaib to ask questions about it. There's some spoilers in it. Let's go into it. Okay, it is obvious that the federal government, even members of Congress, are completely disconnected with the reality of the majority of the American people. That's kind of how it begins with this big quote. In response to the speed at which the U.S. Treasury was delivering stimulus checks for COVID-19, Representative Tlaib told me, it is obvious that the federal government, even members of Congress, are completely disconnected with the reality of the majority of American people. The way they approach this is not based on leading with compassion, nor is it based on logic or where is the greatest need and where can we make the greatest impact. They are throwing spaghetti on the wall and hoping it sticks. We are in a global pandemic. People cannot wait 2 weeks or 4 months, as the IRS says, in some cases for those that need relief. $2 trillion and a microphone is where it's at for current and future generations, according to Representative Tlaib. Picture right there. Mint the coin was the call from the Representative Tlaib at a live campaign rally for former presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, which was a call for support of her unique fiscal policy measure that is included in the ABC Act. Tlaib's enthusiasm for a fiscal policy idea of $2 trillion platinum coins to be minted by U.S. Treasury fueled a movement that had started called the hashtag Mint the Coin. The idea avoids increasing the U.S. national debt by directing the U.S. Treasury to use its legal authority to create money under 31 U.S.C. Section 5112, subsection K, to mint the coins. The Federal Reserve would subsequently purchase them and provide a credit of $2 trillion to the account of the U.S. Treasury, through which the national debt would not be increased regarding what we owe to U.S. creditors. We are at an unprecedented time, this is a quote, we are at an unprecedented time, and we have the capability of minting two coins, but also going through that route without actually increasing our debt or trying to allow our grandchildren or future generations to pay for it. It is not their fault nor their responsibility. I truly believe, said Congresswoman Tlaib. Her economic policy advisor, Chastity Murphy, added that the money set aside in the U.S. Treasury would not be subject to any set-offs, meaning Treasury would not be able to use the funds for other programs and kept them exclusively for funding stimulus payments. Well, that's good. That's a nice thing that they put in here, because basically, you know how the government gets, oh, there's some money. It's meant for this. Well, we'll use it for this. You know how they play that game. Mail, telephone, and in-person pickup before digital dollar, cash, and wallets. At the end of the bill, there is a sense of Congress resolution that by 2021, the Treasury offers e-wallets in the form of digital dollar wallet accounts. And the Federal Reserve make available Fed accounts in the form of digital dollar cash accounts. This concept originally appeared in a draft discussion of the CARES Act, although ultimately was eliminated from consideration in the third COVID-19 stimulus bill. Congresswoman Tlaib told me, I don't talk about the digital dollar with people in the 13th District of Michigan. I focus on how the government needs to get the stimulus to people by mail and in-person pickup, and to provide outreach at the at-risk populations, including the elderly and handicapped. For her constituents in the I gotta take these off because it's hard for me to read the whole zooming thing. For her constituents in the 13th District of Michigan, she wants an electronic debit card called a Bridge Card in Michigan that is currently used to deliver SNAP payments in Michigan. The government sends bridge cards now for people to receive their benefits electronically. There's no reason the government cannot do the same in providing stimulus checks using debit cards. That's true. For those following the ideas of a digital dollar closely, including the crypto industry, hoping for the use of digital exchanges as part of the delivery to the U.S. population, Tlaib made clear she does not believe the infrastructure exists yet. It doesn't, including the lack of broadband access and minute usage on cell phones, cutting out those most in need of receiving the stimulus checks. The broadband, for the most part, exists, but whether or not there's a cell phone in the person's hands and the whole minute phone thing from the Obama-era phones, I'm kind of surprised that we haven't got... I mean, I don't even know how phones, when it comes to the service, hasn't become a utility at this point, just having unlimited, being able to call people. It's like internet. We you know what I mean? Like, when is Starlink going to be becoming a utility where the government just pays Starlink so that everybody on Earth, or at least in the United States rather, can go ahead and have internet? Oh, that would be terrible because, the U.S. government would be paying all this money to give people... Fine, put it in a tax. Put it in a tax. Put it in a tax. A lot of people like me have to pay for internet here, there, different offices, all kinds of stuff. Put it in a tax. Have mass buying power of the federal government. And then what we need to do is obviously get rid of a lot of the abuse of the government. These politicians are playing a lot of games. But the bottom line is, why isn't free internet a utility? Like, we could pay for it at a cheaper cost. We could have a tax on it every year, whatever, Tlaib went on to explain how her constituents in the 13th District of Michigan tell her, I don't have the minutes on my cell phone. When I think of people who live check by check and the average income is $30,000, so many residents that only make 10 to 12 grand, digital dollar and doing transactions in that way and living your life in that way, it's still just not enough, still just not accessible as you might think. So that's true. A lot of individuals who are going through this whole situation, nobody represents homeless people all day long like people like me and people in similar situations like me where we're literally talking to them day in and day out. And the bottom line with that is that they get a minute phone. The minute phone's stolen usually 2 weeks later. Or in some instances, it's sold for drug money. That does happen quite a bit as well. It's not to say that all of them, or even a third of them, or even half of them do that, but a chunk of them do that. But these cell phones have minutes. Every text you get takes away a minute. Every time you go on the phone, each minute is a minute. So the bottom line is that they only get a certain amount of minutes. So at some point, the U.S. is either going to have to set up a system that is essentially based on the internet being a utility, where we either pay a tax on it, or the government, does a massive thing with Starlink, where we hire Starlink on to be our internet provider. Because at the end of the day, the problem is that everybody on this earth needs to have access to some sort of internet. And when it comes to the U.S., I think the U.S. should really start looking at internet as a potential utility for people to have, whether it's we're paying a smaller monthly amount per month, or it's one of those things where we pay a small tax or whatever. I think that is a more really reasonable expectation for the future of internet. But then you have to get into the who's using more internet, who's using less internet, who gets what, who doesn't. For different offices we need internet. For my home I need internet, and I need massive internet. To upload this video, it's going to be a 7-8 gig video to be uploaded. So I think that is very true. She's making a very good point about those who are homeless and low income not having access to phones that can go ahead and use digital money in a proper way. So I raised the notion to the Congresswoman that for the crypto community, there are many young people who are comfortable with technology who may rather use digital dollars or even cryptocurrency. Representative Tlaib responded, I know there's a generation of folks that can benefit with us moving closer to crypto, but we still have a significant number of our neighbors that don't have broadband. A lot of them don't even know enough about those alternative opportunities. There are school districts trying to get laptops, trying to get hotspots. We all want to get somewhere with this, get simpler and accessible, but I don't know if we are there yet, especially in communities where they have been neglected for so long. The ABC Act includes many ideas that will require further analysis. However, for the present moment, the call is clear from Representative Tlaib that more must be done now during this unprecedented pandemic, and that there must be equal distribution of stimulus payments that are provided in an equally timed manner to everyone. All right, so this was written by Jason Brett. Jason Brett states, I'm a former U.S. regulator with the FDIC, compliance examiner for the Making a Home Affordable program, HAMP, with the Treasury, and have been active in Bitcoin, etc., etc. This is the guy who wrote that for Forbes. He is writing it in response to, here's the fact sheet. Here's the bill, HR 1030. House Representatives, Michigan, Democrat. Here's the fact sheet. So what this comes down to is, look, I agree. People need, especially at the lowest income, food stamps aren't enough. And we're coming out of this whole thing, and look, I know this sounds a little bit terrible, but the government shut us down when in some instances they could have not shut us down. Anyways, we're a little off topic of what this is, but the bottom line here is this. I think we do need, with absolute certainty, more money pumped not only to small businesses, but also homeless, low-income, and medium-income people. I think it's a little bit ridiculous that we're saying that higher-income people are like the $75,000 and above. That's not higher-income people. I think $400,000 and above is higher-income people. I don't think $75,000 and above is higher-income people. I think that that's ridiculous, in my opinion. So my point here to you guys is the following. This is not a perfect bill. I think Forbes did a good job. They interviewed her, which I like. Forbes usually does a good job. But the funding of how they're doing it is going to have really bad outcomes. It's going to make everything really expensive in the long run, and that's just going to hurt the poor. But there's another thing too. You have to create this to get people thinking about how it can really be done. Like, this is the first step. And I know people are like, oh, I don't really like her. She's against what I believe. She's against my religion, stuff like that. It usually takes Democrats to go ahead and create ideas. And then it usually takes Republicans to go ahead and create how it can actually be done. And I know when you're sitting there going, how could you say that? I'm a Democrat and we always figure things out. And the Republicans are sitting there going and saying, what are you saying? We innovate lots of stuff. No. If you look at the modern ways of how things work, it usually requires a Democrat to come up with a new idea and then a Republican to figure out how it could actually happen. That's usually how it happens with this stuff. And so when people are like, oh, this crazy new Green Deal, this or that, remember, these are innovations. It requires both parties for the most part. I mean, I know what we have right now. We have the Democrats having control of all of it, but it usually requires both parties to be able to come out with how it's going to be done. My point here is this. Going green, having a form of UBI, no matter what you do, that's going to be part of the future. Electric cars, specialized water systems, specialized electricity systems, anti-gravity, self-driving vehicles. It's all part of the future. It's all part of the future. I think that's one of the big issues with Republicans attaching to the idea of conservatism and being, conservative and, is that it's a holdback approach. It's holding on to the origin theory. And the thing is, technology is the main changer of not only what we use, how we use it, and the culture that we interact with it with. How we have our culture and we use it. So I think one of the big problems is that Republicans are going to have a tough time going forward with a lot of these new technologies. When fusion comes out, self-driving cars fully come out, blah, 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 blah. When all these things come out, Republicans are going to constantly be playing the catch-up game. But it usually requires a Democrat to see the future and a Republican to make it work. That's just how it works. It's just how it works, So anyways, guys, I'm going to be doing the Fox article, which attached a bunch of crap to the end of it. And I hate when they do this, but they do it for SEO purposes. So, literally what could have been 2 pages is this. It won't be long, but I'm going to read to you specifically what Fox News had to say about this particular bill. And I'm trying to give you some Democrat voices, some Republican voices, and things like that. And then, kind of wrap it together so you can have a better understanding of specifically how this is going to work. All right? My name is Attorney Walter Rufnaut III. I'm with Disability Resolution PA. Have an absolutely wonderful day. Like, subscribe, and also please leave me 5 stars if any of this information was helpful to you. If you don't like me, you can always go watch another channel. There's a bunch of them out there, but please watch out for clickbait. Have an absolutely wonderful day, and I'll catch you a little bit later. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.